When you're a kid, you think the universe revolves around you. You think that you'll always be protected and cared for. Then, one day, you realize that's not true.
Hello and welcome to the Damian and Devlin show, and this is our review of It, the 2017 horror film directed by Andy Muschietti? Muschietti? That sounds right. Also starring Jaden Lieberher, Sophia Lillis, Finn Wolfhard, and Bill Skarsgård. And there's a lot more of people in here, but those are the ones I will focus on, even though this was a really good cast. I wish I could give them a hint to them all. Anyhow, for those of you who don't know this is the Stephen King-based novel. This is the movie version that came out and became a big, huge blockbuster success last year. And it had been made into a mini-series for TV a couple of decades prior to this. But this took it to the big screen, and whoa, I am a big fan of this movie. I was telling Damian I saw this 4 times. This is my 4th viewing. This was Damian's first, so your first initial feelings on it.
You know, I had always been interested in seeing this movie. I remember catching glimpses of the miniseries when I was a kid on TV, and it actually kind of frightened me when I was a kid. Now I'm talking like 6 years old kid, because I think the miniseries came out in '91, which would have been the year I was born. So I'm thinking maybe 5, maybe 6 years old, and the glimpses that I caught on TV definitely freaked me out. I never watched it. I still have yet to see the miniseries, but you actually recommended that I should watch this one first, as opposed to the miniseries.
Yeah, the miniseries has a lot of limitations, and it's really dated now. Not to mention because it was on TV, and it's not like we're going back to network TV. We're not talking about like Netflix, where they have like you're allowed to do almost anything now. Mm-hmm. They actually really get into the depth of, from what I heard, like I've never read the book, but I've heard this is one of Stephen King's darkest books. And even Stephen King has said there's stuff that he doesn't think will ever translate to a version of this. And he had to, even he had to mile down some things they did for this movie, but I still think it's pretty powerful.
I would agree. I totally enjoyed the ride, for sure. I've never really experienced a movie recently except for The Conjuring, which I've mentioned before, that actually made me uneasy and disturbed. So definitely that's going to be one of my positives when we get into it. I really felt that it accomplished that goal for sure.
For those of you who don't know what this movie's about, basically it's I don't want to give too much away because you find out about it, but basically it's about a group of kids that have a series of dreams, much like the Nightmare on Elm Street series, but they realize that they're all connected and that there's actually a whole historical backstory before it. And this movie does a great job of capturing childhood fears, like every kind of anxiety and fear a child would feel. I think they hit most of them, if not, you know, obviously there's ones they probably haven't hit, but I think this movie plays with your head, and I think you can find a kid or a storyline that you can identify with, or even multiple ones. So why don't we get into our positives?
Okay, awesome. Well, honestly, I mean, you have to shout out Bill Skarsgård. It was a Bill
Skarsgård.
Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. Now, like I said, I'd seen glimpses of Tim Curry as Pennywise, but not enough to go off of.
Yeah, and Tim Curry is really the standout in those movies. Because, as I said, it's hit and miss, the miniseries, but it's one of Tim Curry's best performances.
So nothing against him, because like I said, I've not seen it. I don't really know his performance, but Bill Skarsgård did an awesome job as Pennywise. Right from the get-go, when you first meet him, the way that he speaks, he comes off as incredibly creepy and disturbing, and that's exactly what he should come off as. Yeah. I'm not sure if he's an alien, a demon, a monster, but he's just weird. and weird in all the right ways. So definitely his performance as Pennywise has to stand out as one of my huge positives for this movie.
Yeah, if he didn't nail it, it wouldn't work. The movie wouldn't work.
Exactly. And when you're playing like a psychotic clown like this, I mean, you run the risk of screwing up huge. I mean, you could either become Heath Ledger as the Joker from The Dark Knight, or you could become 60s Batman Joker. Like, there's so many ways that you could have gone wrong with this, but he definitely did a great job playing this psychotic killer clown.
I don't want to interrupt you, but his first scene is introduction where he talks to one of the younger kids. I think is a beautiful debut for a film. Like, it's a great way to start because he's kind of got that clown sweetness, but like all kids, when you meet up with a clown, you got that. And the kid does a great job with that. Yeah, okay, it's a clown. Because there is a bit of sweetness, but it's also got that anxiety, like, I don't know if I trust this clown.
Exactly. And I think he nails it perfectly. I actually felt like all the kid actors, minus one, did a fantastic job. And you know, if it wasn't for that one kid who I'll talk about, it would have been almost a perfect movie for me. I really enjoyed, obviously, Finn Wolfhard, who's from Stranger Things. He always does a great job, and you actually made the comment. In Stranger Things, he plays such a different character, so it shows this young actor's range and diversity and style, which is awesome. I was introduced to the rest of the kids for the very first time, as far as I know, and I felt most of them, like I said, did a fantastic job with it. I really, really, really also loved the story. Going so far as to develop the backstory as to potentially why this was going on. Now, one thing that I'll mention, I can't actually mention it, but with regards to the story, let's just say that things are left unresolved, but they're left unresolved for a particular reason, so that it can set up the sequel, which apparently is coming out next year.
That's not a spoiler, because a lot of people know that the book is long. The miniseries had 2 parts, and what they decided to do was that this movie is pretty long for a horror movie, because most horror movies are about 90 minutes and so. This one actually sets up for the next one, which is the 2nd chapter. So, and that's coming out next year, and I cannot wait.
No, not after seeing the first one. I definitely can't wait either. But that's not a negative of mine, by the way. It's just I liked the story, and I liked where they ended it off because, it was long, but it was enjoyable all throughout. I felt like there was never a moment where I was left going, okay, come on, let's speed it up. Oh, I know what's going to happen next. It was well-paced. It was well thought out, and it always kept you guessing. Kind of like Saw. I always wanted to know like what the next games were, what the next traps were in Saw. This, I always wanted to know what was going to happen to these kids next. Like, what were we going to see and experience with Pennywise next? So that was awesome. I mean, it's a positive and negative. Some aspects of the some aspects of the music, that's what I'm trying to say. Some aspects of the music I really liked. Other aspects of it, not so much. And the reason why not so much is because I felt it kind of blasted you in the face. And maybe that was for a reason, but I felt like there were plenty of moments in this movie where it's quiet, 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 and then suddenly you're plastered in the face with loud noises and loud music. So that kind of jarred me a bit, and it startled me at one point. You
jumped.
Yeah, you startled me at one point. And, I mean, yes, sure, it's effective, but after a while, because it happens more than once throughout the movie, it kind of gets a little repetitive and annoying with that. Again, that's a negative that I'll not touch on since I just spoke about it, but overall the movie does a fantastic job. Last but not least, what I'll touch on is I felt the graphics were really good in this. So much so that I thought that Bill Skarsgård was actually contortioning his body at points.
Beautiful
because they were so well done. And obviously when I realized what was going on, I was like, okay, that's not humanly possible, but that just goes to show you how excellent they were.
No, I totally agree. I was going to touch on that, but I'll just continue with you. It's, there are scenes that it's just like Pennywise is like a rag doll. Like you said, you're really not sure if he's a demon, an alien, what. If he's just like an imaginary person in these kids' minds. But the ideas of how they make him move are so well done, or even when he transforms forms, and you can see like his hands. It's almost seamless, and I think that's what gives the nightmarish angle to this. I will say what I believe the success of this movie is. And again, we said that I'm so happy they took their time developing the characters and the story.
Yes,
because
sure.
if they tried to put both chapters in one, we would have got a 3-hour movie, and I have a feeling it wouldn't have worked, you know. The thing that makes it work is that it is a coming-of-age movie first, and a horror second. I like that this movie has a feeling of like other Stephen King movies, like A Stand By Me and stuff like that. You know, a lot of younger people say, well, I liked it, but it felt like Stranger Things. Well, Stranger Things borrowed a lot of Stephen King stuff. You can tell they're fans of it. So yes, there is going to be similarities, but remember who brought it around the first time, and that's why it works. But it's a coming-of-age story first. See, the real horror in this movie is that they play on the fears of the kids. And when, especially in characters like Beverly, who beautifully played by Sophia Lillis, like wonderful. I've never heard of this actress, and she, wonderful.
Absolutely. Her
backstory, and I believe Nicholas Hamilton, who plays Henry, you almost get the feeling, now he's the real bully in this, and he's really intense. And they don't go into his backstory quite as much as the other kids. But the horror of this story is that they actually kind of deal with the fact that some of these kids' real lives might be just as terrifying before the clown shows up. Yeah. And they hint on it enough to make you a little edgy if you have ever dealt with physical abuse, sexual, emotional abuse. But they handle it very well. But that's where I feel that the real horror comes from. And then when the clown shows up, it adds to it. But there's so many hints. And I think one of the great things, and I'm going to give the director, because I think he also co-wrote this movie, Andy, I can never get the name right, Muschietti. And I think what he gets right is that the script is so well done. What I also like is that the parents are almost like they're under a spell. Not like when we reviewed Nightmare on Elm Street and I just felt they were all the villains of the movie. There literally feels like the parents may have dealt with Pennywise in the past.
That's what I got too.
And they didn't get involved, and they were worried about their kids but never dealt with it in their own screwed up ways.
That's what I took away from it too, that the parents had run-ins with Pennywise in the past.
Yeah.
And they were almost afraid that their children were going to fall into the same trappings. I mean, at one point, a decision is given to the characters, the kids, to just walk away and they can live up and grow and be old and whatnot. And it almost made me think that maybe some of their parents were given that same decision and decided to take it and walk away and grow old.
Yeah, I started noticing this about the second time, but I'm glad you caught it right away, is when there's a scene that's really bullied by these kids, and a car drives past where they all stop, but it's blatantly obvious the kid is being tormented, and they just drive off slowly, and then you see the balloon in the back. And that's where I started thinking, I wonder if the book goes into the fact that maybe the parents are under some kind of...
They might be.
Yeah, I don't know. There are so many layers of this movie, and that's why I never get bored of watching this movie, because it's so good. I already touched on Sophia Lillis' performance in this. All the kids, in my eyes, were good. Damian will deal with his one problem or two or whatever. But I also want to give a shout out to Jaden Lieberher, and I don't think I'm saying that right in any way. But I think his performance as Bill is incredible. He stutters. He also has to deal with some loss in his life. And I think just watching him, even the style, I was brought up in the 80s. I knew characters like this. But Bill was just like the kind of friend you really wanted growing up, because he's a little shy, he's a little out there, but he's always going to have your back. And I love that. And Again, I never knew about this kid. He's amazing. And like, as I said, there's so many great performances, but I'd just be talking about performances. I already mentioned the special effects are really incredible. Just the art direction, angles of the way the camera is. I am so happy he's coming back to do the second one, because I think if they got another director, it could be a mess, but at least... I'll get that more into my negatives, because I don't have a lot of negatives, so I'll talk about that, but I'm so happy that Andy Muschietti, maybe if I say it enough, I'll convince myself I'm saying it right, I'm really happy he's coming back. And I will hit on the 80s. I have mentioned that I hate when I watch 80s movies, and it's so obvious they're trying to just hit you in the face with over-the-topness. This movie is so subtle. In fact, except for this random soundtrack, some of the clothes, they don't go over the top at all. I like it. I like it. And for a kid that was born up in this town, this was like a town I would have easily felt was just something from my past.
Yeah, and I will agree with that. Like, you guys have heard me complain many, many times about how overdone like that 80s fashion is, the cars. Again, this is one of those movies that does it right. I have no complaints about it because it felt normal. It felt like I was there in the 80s with these kids. So definitely I would agree with that.
Your negatives.
So you actually pointed out just now some random bits of the soundtrack. There was one really jarring moment with regards to the soundtrack that still bothers me, and I don't understand why they decided to do this. And it also includes like really close-up imagery as well of a poster of the band whose music was playing. New Kids on the Block. Okay. When they walk into the fatter kids. Ben. Sorry, Ben. But when they walk into Ben's bedroom for the first time, Beverly closes the door while all the other kids are looking at the stuff on Ben's walls, and it reveals a New Kids on the Block poster. And then suddenly the camera just like changes, like all over the place, zooming in on this poster, playing a really loud clip of one of their songs, and then it stops. And then it just was so overwhelming to me and jarring that even now I'm still thinking about it and going, what was the point of that? And that's what I'm talking about with regards to sometimes...
And I'm going to just let you continue, but I'm going to come to the defense of this scene. Because I know what it is. And as I said, all through this movie, it deals with little fears. Like every nuance in this movie. And at this moment, Beverly kind of finds the poster, and we find out that Ben tries to let it go, but a couple times it's mentioned he's listening to New Kids on the Block who came out that summer. And I think when they do the jarring music, it's Ben's feelings of, oh my God, these kids are ragging on me already. If they find it and they blasted in his face like it was a fear, and then Beverly was cool enough to say, I won't reveal your secret. But that's just how I think they played it.
And you've seen it a few times. You've seen it a few times, so maybe that's what you take away from it.
I understand. It is an unusual choice, but again, I take it as yet another little fear in...
And that's fine.
You know, when you like a group and you're afraid, oh my God, my friends are going to find out I like
See,
that.
I can't relate to that because no matter who I like, I'll even say it right now. I like Celine Dion. In fact, I think I've already said that I liked it when we reviewed Titanic. So I'm not afraid to say about the things that I like, but I get it. I totally get it. Because as a kid, sure.
That's just my take on it. I don't know. I've not sat with them.
That makes sense. But for a first-time viewer, and maybe even just a casual viewer, it's jarring, and you might be left scratching your head as to why. But now if you've not seen it, and when it happens, perhaps you can take his explanation and it'll make more sense for you. But it happens all throughout the film, and it left me a little bit jarred when that happened.
That's fair.
I did mention as well, there's one kid in particular I could not stand for the life of me, and it's nothing to do with his character, it's the actor that portrays him. I just felt he was trying way too hard to be over-the-top scared. He reminded me like of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo with the over-the-top, oh my God, kind of scared. It's the little Jewish boy, I think his name is Steve? Stan. The little Jewish boy Stan. I cannot stand him. At one point, I just was hoping that this kid would be offed.
Oh my God.
Like, I just wanted him gone.
That's wrong, Damian.
A little bit, but you know...
Not a little bit, that's a whole lot of wrong.
But that's just how much he annoyed me. As well... And I know this is bad of me, but maybe this is just my generation, and you probably will tell me that it's my generation, but I was hoping for a bigger body count.
Oh my god. No spoilers, by the way.
I was hoping for a bigger body count. I just felt like there wasn't enough deaths. I felt if a couple more deaths occurred, it would have been more impactful.
Kind of like waiting for Infinity War 2?
What? What are you talking about?
Well, they're going to be probably a higher body count in the second one. Maybe they're saving it for the second one.
I can't believe that you're debating that with me right now while we're reviewing
I'm just saying that maybe we're holding off on a lot of big deaths because it might come in the second one.
I don't know. But you know what? Regardless of the low body count, I wished for it, and I know that's wrong of me to wish for it. And like I said, maybe that's just the way that my generation is, because you
idolize the villains, right?
Sometimes, but actually I was rooting for the kids in this movie, and
but you want them all to die.
No, I wanted Stan to die.
Oh my god!
But you actually made a point of this in the Nightmare on Elm Street review, is the fact that eventually in those movies you would see the audience go, "Yeah, kill him!" and things like that, and cheering Freddy on. So maybe this is a product of that atmosphere. I don't know. But yes, my generation definitely does worship the bad guy more often than the good guy. This one is not one of those movies, though. I was endeared to a lot of the kids. Bill, Beverly, even, you know what, Finn Wolfhard's character, I can't remember. Richie. He was annoying, and I wanted to punch him in the face several times, but he was still endearing, and I liked him, especially as well the kid Mike. They were all outcasts, and they all came together perfectly, but just, yeah, I apologize for people that think like, oh my gosh, Damian's a little demented, wanting more child death in his movie. And I know how bad it sounds, but I felt it would have been a little bit more impactful, and that's just a personal decision on my end. Those are the only negatives that I have with the movie.
All right, that's fair enough. We could do a whole thing on that, but we won't because
inside Damian's mind,
I can feel my blood boiling. But we'll go to my negatives, and I don't have many. My first one is the first interaction I mentioned that Pennywise has. I love. He actually talks, and it's wonderful because he does a beautiful tightrope between creepy and sweet and God, what's going to happen next? Like, you're always thinking, this, we know he's the villain. We know he's the villain, but I want to think he's charming, but I know he's not. And it's beautiful. What I came out of this with the first viewing, and still after the fourth, and I'm going to be more optimistic and say maybe it's because they're going to save it more for the second one. But I was actually saddened that we didn't get more of that kind of interaction. Pennywise does talk to some of the kids here and there, but we don't get to see Pennywise working that magic. There's even sequences where he seems to take control of kids' heads. And he does it in a nice manipulative way, and it's clever. They use the TV, they use lots of different things, but I wanted to see Pennywise interact more that was more on a verbal, because I thought he was pretty creepy as verbal, but instead they go for the big theatrics. And I kind of was disappointed by that, because I love the theatrics, don't get me wrong, but once again, I think that they played something really, they could have gone further with it. Now, a couple of weeks ago, if you watch our Nightmare on Elm Street, one of my negatives on Nightmare on Elm Street was I said, here's a movie that's ripe to play on psychological issues. You know, play with your head, like movies like Alien and Psycho and Halloween do. This is not a negative. It does exactly what I wanted from the Nightmare on Elm. It plays with your head, because even if you're not freaked out by the clown, it gets you thinking about your past and your fears as a kid. And do I still have them? Are they still somewhere deep in me? So that was one of my problems, is that they hit the psychological thing, but I think they could have gone further by having Pennywise interact a little bit more, because I think Pennywise has got a great character there. But he seems to lose it after that first brilliant interaction. Yeah. Even though they win you over with like all the clever cuts. But then after you walk away from the movie, that's when you start realizing, I kind of wish I saw Pennywise talk a little more. because I think that's where the creepiness lies, but I'm holding out for the sequel.
Yeah.
And that's my second negative, and it's not really a negative towards this movie. When I saw this movie, I realized how awesome this movie is. Like, to me, this is one of the best horrors that have come out in a while. And again, I just told you, one of the reasons why is it's not all horror. It's a coming-of-age story. And, oh, by the way, we have a horror story here. And that's what makes this work. This next chapter is going to take a totally different turn. Most sequels usually get, you know, similar actors, the same actors. Anybody who knows the book, and I'm not revealing anything here, knows that you have to start almost with a fresh canvas, which means that they are going to have one hell of a time, and I'm going to be rooting for them to get it right, because this movie is so high up in my heart that I'm going to be very critical. I'm going to try to leave that all at the door, but it's going to be tough because you fall in love with these characters, and now all these characters have to be recast. And if these characters don't nail them as adults, it could be a little bit rough. And so I'm nervous about that because they set the bar, in my eyes, very high. No, I don't think it's impossible, but it's high, very high.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some kid actors that nailed the adult portions of it perfectly. But nailing a kid actor is hard. Because, I mean, they are still growing as a real person, too. Yeah. So, like, if you'd have, like, I know you said James McAvoy is going to be in the second one.
I believe he's one of the people. Jessica Chastain might be in there as well. Bill Hader. I can't remember everybody.
I mean, having them follow these kids around or even just trying to study the way that these kids interact is definitely going to be difficult. Right. So, I agree with you. They have
and you also got the other layer of... you also have the layer of them where they are in the future, because I happen to know not all of their futures are not the best, so they have to play that on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So. Regardless, it's going to be an exciting sequel.
And having the same director and writers is a plus, because at least we're going to get the same vision. It's not just going to be, I'm going to try to make it like the other one.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm holding out hope. I'm very optimistic.
I'm definitely looking forward to the sequel. What are you giving the first one, though?
I'm going to give it, I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I think it's close. So I'm going to give it a 4.5. I do think there are some issues with it, but I think they're minimal. And I still could watch this next week again. Like, it's so... I love this movie so much, but again, it's because I love the characters and how they do things. So 4.5, I'm going to go.
4.5, right on. For me, it's the actor that plays Steve? What's his name? Stan, the Jewish guy. I couldn't stand him, as well as those drawing moments that just occasionally popped up. For me, seemingly randomly for my first viewing, I have to give this movie a 4. I really did enjoy it. It is still high. I really did enjoy it. I know it had promised to go even further than that, and that's why, as well with you, I'm really looking forward to the second one now that I've seen the first one. So
now, I've shown you some horrors in the past that you said, I don't think I need to see it again. Would you watch
this one? I want to own this movie. I will definitely watch this again in the future.
My big problem is, am I going to watch it just before the sequel? Because that sometimes can be a problem, because sometimes you remember how good it is. I don't know. I might watch it a couple months beforehand, just to give the new one a little bit of a,
You never know. One fun fact before we leave you today is that when it was actually released 27 years after the original TV movie series.
I did not know that.
It was. And
that means something for anybody who knows it or is going to see it.
So keep that in mind next time you watch it. Unfortunately, we won't have 27 years between this one and the next one, which is good at the same time. So just a little fun fact for you there. But thank you so much for joining us on our Halloween adventure. We're still continuing on strong. Get your comments out there. Let us know what you think about it. Did you like this one? Did you like the TV miniseries? Do you like both of them? Give us your reasons why. We'd love to hear it. Make sure you share the video. Get us out there as well. Subscribe so you never miss a beat. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on our next adventure. Take care.
When
a balloon, Damian? Balloons are fun. What's your favorite food? Mine's popcorn. Pop